If you were told that just 5 minutes a day could transform your life, would you believe it? David certainly didn't. Sitting alone in his cluttered apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and half-packed boxes, he felt utterly defeated. He had lost his job a month ago, and with it, his confidence. Every morning, he woke with a weight on his chest, convinced that nothing he did could possibly fix the mess his life had become. 5 minutes? What difference could 5 minutes make in the face of years of mistakes and regret? One rainy evening, David's old friend Marcus dropped by. Seeing the state of David's apartment and spirit, Marcus gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know you're hurting," Marcus said softly, surveying the chaotic room. "But you can't rebuild everything in a day. Remember, even a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Just try doing one small thing, even if it's only for 5 minutes. David scoffed at first. How was 5 minutes of effort going to pay his debts or find him a new job? But that night, as he lay in bed unable to sleep, Marcus's words echoed in his mind. One single step, 5 minutes. In his exhaustion and despair, David decided he had nothing to lose. He set his alarm for the next morning, just 5 minutes earlier than usual. The next day at dawn, the alarm beeped. David's first instinct was to ignore it. For a long moment, he stared at the ceiling, feeling the familiar heaviness in his limbs. But then, remembering his promise to at least try, he forced himself up. 5 minutes, he muttered. "I can handle 5 minutes." He looked around at the clothes strewn on the floor and the dusty shelves. With a deep breath, he picked a small corner of the living room and began to tidy for just 5 minutes. He sorted a pile of old magazines, threw out some trash, and wiped the coffee table. When the timer rang, he stopped. The little corner he cleaned looked visibly better, a tiny island of order in a sea of chaos. To his surprise, David felt a faint spark of accomplishment. It was small, but it was real. For the first time in weeks, he managed to finish something. He allowed himself a slight smile. That was day 1. On day 2, David tackled another 5-minute task. He spent 5 minutes washing a sink full of dishes that had been haunting him. He didn't finish them all, but even a few plates cleaned felt like progress. On day 3, he spent 5 minutes sorting through unopened mail, finally facing what he'd been avoiding. Each day it was just a tiny effort, insignificant on its own. But with each small win, David's confidence grew a little. A fog was slowly lifting. By the end of the first week, David noticed something unexpected. Those 5-minute cleanups were adding up. Sunlight now fell on a clean patch of floor by the window, where before there had been heaps of junk. The kitchen counter had room for a coffee mug again. These changes were modest, almost invisible to anyone else. But to David, they felt monumental. Each small victory made him feel a bit more in control. The simple act of showing up for 5 minutes every day was igniting a hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Encouraged by the tiny improvements, David wondered what else he could change in 5 minutes. One morning, instead of sinking into his threadbare couch after cleaning, he laced up a pair of dusty running shoes. "I'll just walk to the end of the street and back." 5 minutes, he decided. That brisk morning walk through his neighborhood left him oddly refreshed. The next day, he walked a little farther. On his way back, an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, waved from her garden. Noticing him out and about for the first time in ages, she smiled warmly and said, "It's good to see you, David. Lovely morning for a walk, isn't it?" Her kind greeting stayed with him. Such a simple interaction, but it lit a warm spot in David's heart. He realized he'd been isolating himself for weeks. Now, in just a few minutes each day, he was reconnecting with the world. The small wins were beginning to ripple outward. With a clearer mind from his short walks and a cleaner home from his mini tidy-ups, David felt brave enough to open his laptop and update his resume. Just 5 minutes at first, fixing a line or two. Another day, he spent 5 minutes drafting a short email to an old colleague just to say hello and mention he was looking for opportunities. Hitting send on that email made his hands tremble, but also made him proud. That tiny action took courage. A week later, David returned from his morning walk to find an email response from his old colleague. She mentioned a potential opening at her company and offered to recommend him. David's heart nearly leapt out of his chest. It was just a possibility, not a job offer, but for the first time in months, it felt like a door opening. And it had happened because he dared to take that little step. He sank into his chair, staring at the screen, amazed that a 5-minute effort could lead to an opportunity. Not everything was smooth sailing. One afternoon, about a month into his new routine, David felt the old despair creeping back. He had been cleaning, walking, and applying for jobs in small doses, but still had no full-time work. That day, he received a rejection email from one company and felt his optimism crash. Slumping onto his now cleared couch, he thought, maybe all this is pointless. 5 minutes a day isn't fixing my life fast enough. He contemplated giving up, letting the apartment fall back into disarray, letting his hopes slip away again. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Marcus. Stepping inside, Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. The apartment, once a hoarder's den of despair, looked lived in and bright. Sunlight streamed through windows David had managed to clean. "Wow," Marcus said, grinning. "I almost thought I had the wrong address. This place looks great." David shrugged, embarrassed, but couldn't hide a tiny, proud grin. Marcus sat with him and listened as David vented about the rejection and his fear that all this effort was futile. After a pause, Marcus asked, "Do you remember what this living room looked like a month ago?" David glanced around and nodded. He remembered the mountains of clutter, the thick dust on the shelves. Marcus continued, "And now look at it. You did this 5 minutes at a time. The circumstances in your life may not have completely turned around yet, but you have. You're not the same man who gave up. You're fighting a few minutes each day. That's not pointless." Hearing those words, David felt something shift inside him. He realized Marcus was right. He had changed. The tidy home, the healthier body, the renewed connections with neighbors and friends, even the job prospect on the horizon, were all proof that his small efforts were working. Each 5-minute victory was a brick, and brick by brick he had been rebuilding his life. He straightened up, determination rekindled. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've come too far to quit now." 2 weeks later, the climax of David's journey arrived. He got a call to come in for an interview at his old colleague's company. On the morning of the interview, David stood in front of his mirror, adjusting a tie he'd found and cleaned during one of his 5-minute decluttering sprees. He looked different, a bit leaner, a bit sharper. As he met his own eyes, he realized there was a calm confidence in them that hadn't been there before. That was the real change. During the interview, David answered questions with honesty and composure. He talked about how he had been spending his time freelancing and improving himself in small ways. Perhaps it was the referral, or his portfolio, or the quiet assurance in his demeanor, but by the end of the day, he received the call he had dreamed of. He got the job. It wasn't a dream job or a huge salary, but it was a new start. When he hung up the phone, David didn't jump or shout. He simply sat in silence, letting tears of relief fill his eyes. In that still moment, he understood deeply. It was the tiny steps that led him here. David's story is a testament to the power of small wins. In the beginning, 5 minutes seemed trivial to him, too trivial to matter, but those small, consistent efforts became the foundation of a profound transformation. 5 minutes of cleaning turned into a clean home. 5-minute walks turned into a healthier, happier mind. A few minutes spent reaching out to a friend opened the door to a new job. Each step was small on its own, but together they created a wave of change. In our own lives, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the big problems and daunting goals ahead. We might think we need to make radical changes overnight to see any difference. David's journey reminds us that this isn't true. Great things are achieved one small step at a time. When we commit to just 5 minutes of positive action, whether it's learning a new skill, tidying up, exercising, or planning our day, we plant a seed. With patience and persistence, that tiny seed can grow into something remarkable. So whenever you feel stuck or discouraged, remember David and his 5-minute victories. Be patient with yourself and trust the process of gradual growth. Even the smallest win is still a win, and each one will give you the strength to take the next step. Over time, those small steps can carry you further than you ever imagined. A calm mind, a hopeful heart, and the courage to begin again for just 5 minutes. That is enough to change everything. In the end, the mighty oak grows from a tiny acorn, and a journey of 1,000 miles really does begin with a single step. Your 5 minutes today could be the start of something life-changing tomorrow. That is the quiet, humble power of small wins. Keep going. Your future self will thank you.